Welcome to the Breakup Recovery Podcasts by your host, Barbara Stevens. Discover the wisdom and remarkable insights of Barbara Stevens, breakup recovery mentor, author, and public speaker. Barbara offers programs and solutions for any breakup so you can turn your life around, create lasting changes for the better, and embrace life again.
Welcome to Breakup Recovery Podcast. I'm Barbara Stevens, and in this episode we explore the answers to a question I'm asked by my clients. How do I find or choose a good lawyer? Very few of us have experience with the legal system, and we have all heard both good and bad stories about lawyers when it comes to breakups, separations, or divorce. We hear of friends or acquaintances that have engaged a legal firm, and this firm has been recommended to you. However, every situation or case is different. Just because a lawyer was a good fit for someone else doesn't mean that they will be a good fit for you. And choosing a lawyer on their reputation or if they have been referred to you is not enough, because finding the right lawyer for you can be the key to your sanity. Amongst other things, they help you to make the best decision about your settlement, and you need to be able to trust them to protect your best interests. So in this episode of Breakup Recovery, I interview Annalee Madsen from Feeney Family Law. Annalee takes the mystery out of choosing a lawyer and explains the key traits and what to look for when the time comes to choose legal representation after your breakup. I also wanted to apologise for the sound quality in this podcast. There seems to be a bit of noise on my part of the interview. I hope you get constructive tips and ideas from listening to Annalee. Hello and welcome to Breakup Recovery. This is episode number 035. I'm Barbara Stevens, and in this episode of Breakup Recovery, I have with me Annalee Madsen, a lawyer from Feeney Family Law, who has kindly agreed to share some tips and ideas for people who are navigating the legal process. So welcome, Annalee.
Hi Barb, thanks for having me.
So Annalee, why did you choose to get into family law?
Well, Barb, that's definitely a question I'm very frequently asked. And I'd say for me, ultimately, it's the human element factor. Every day I have clients that I can see, I meet with, and ultimately I help them. And that level of interaction definitely isn't something that you get in all areas of law. I've been working in family law firms now for nearly 10 years. I initially started working in family law while I was studying and completing my law studies. I've since been admitted as a solicitor, and what I ultimately realised is that I really just like helping people, especially, I suppose, during times of crisis and transition. And that's ultimately what a separation is. And it's incredibly rewarding to be able to form bonds with clients and to be able to see a client become stronger and more confident. And knowing that I can be, I suppose, part of that process of personal growth is what's so rewarding for me. So definitely the human element factor, but also too, family law enables me to be, I suppose, a creative problem solver. And clients come to you when they have so much going on emotionally and legally, and it's great to be given an opportunity to use some of my strategic thinking and creativity to be able to help a client navigate through a legal process. So definitely it's a career that has found me, and it certainly feels like a fit.
So based on your experience, what is the best advice you would give to someone who is wanting to engage a lawyer for their settlement?
In my experience, very few people see a family lawyer before they actually need one. And by that, I mean that when you're confronted with the possibility of a separation or you're going through that process, it's pretty normal to feel off balance, uncertain, you mightn't know where to turn. So I'd certainly say if there aren't any urgent issues, if you're safe and your children are safe and there are adequate financial arrangements in place, the best advice I can give is go slow. Allow yourself some time to process the emotional part of what you're going through. And I say that because ultimately when you come to the stage of engaging a lawyer, they're there to represent your interests and your needs. They're not there to represent your anger. And that's why services like the service you offer, Barb, are so important, because they can run parallel to that legal process. And so a client can be supported emotionally whilst also navigating through the maze that is often a legal process. So if you can, give yourself some time to have some breathing space. But once you get to the point where you're processing those emotions and you know a lawyer is the person you need to see, then I'd say be prepared. Go to your lawyer armed with questions that you have. Identify what your concerns are. Definitely, if you have financial issues, when you go and see a lawyer, have a bit of a background ready to go. Be able to explain to them what your financial situation is, what you and your partner own. The same when it comes to parenting matters. Go to your lawyer with a bit of a background. In order for you to get the best possible advice, be prepared and equipped to answer any of questions that a solicitor might have. I normally suggest to a client who wants to book in an initial consultation with me, do up a bit of a chronology, do up a bit of a background, explain to me what's gone on so that I get the best possible understanding about you. So definitely, like I said, Barb, 2 key messages: go slow, but when you're ready to go, be prepared.
Annalee, how hard is it for you if a client comes to you and they are still racked with emotion? They're still angry, they're still hurt, they're bitter. How hard does that make your job?
At the end of the day, I suppose I'm qualified as a solicitor. I'm not qualified as a psychologist. So when I have a client who's still very angry, very bitter, feeling everything and it's still so raw, I can certainly empathise and listen and sit with you, but I'm not equipped to be able to work you through those emotions. And as I said earlier, ultimately, if I'm doing the right thing by you as a client, I'm representing your interests and your needs. And if you're giving me instructions from a place of anger or sadness or bitterness, then I'm not necessarily representing your interests and your needs. I'm representing your emotions. Another thing I often say too to clients who do tend to be experiencing so much of an emotional reaction is it's pretty expensive to be using your lawyer as a sounding board for emotional matters. When, not cheap in terms of an hourly rate. So I'd say don't let emotion hijack the legal process with your lawyer. Definitely, good lawyer will help you keep that emotion in check and remind you to keep it in check. They won't ignore it or pretend it doesn't exist, but they'll encourage you to move past that.
Great advice there, Annalee. There are a lot of lawyers out there. What do you consider a client should look for in a lawyer when they're wanting to go through the process of settlement?
Ultimately, it's pretty simple. Look for a good fit. Find a lawyer that you're comfortable with, because that level of comfort and ease that you have is going to impact your experience of your legal process. They say that going through a separation is potentially one of the most confronting periods during a person's life. They say the level of stress you feel is often akin to the level of stress you might feel if there are a death in the family or a significant loss like that. So you want a lawyer that as much as possible can make the journey as stress-free as possible. So in terms of the actual traits to look for, I'd say find a lawyer who's responsive. And by responsive, I mean responsive to your emotional needs. So they're going to be able to help keep those elements in check and be able to respond and adapt and have the degree of insight to know whether your instructions are coming from a place of anger or a place of objectivity. And also responsive in a practical sense. So if they say they're going to get back to you, they actually get back to you. I think that's important, particularly because experience tells me when you do engage a lawyer, you are going to feel anxious. You're going to want to know what's going on, and you're going to want to know that you found a lawyer who's going to let you know exactly what's going on. So definitely responsiveness is a key trait. I think to look for a lawyer who ultimately is honest with you. A good family lawyer is not just going to tell you what they think you want to hear. They're going to tell you what you need to hear. And sometimes that is going to mean a family lawyer is going to give you advice you mightn't necessarily like, but they're doing you a favor in the long run. Again, my experience tells me that unrealistic advice is so ultimately what draws matters out, escalates costs, and ultimately adds to the stress of a matter. I think too, in terms of a family lawyer, I often say my job requires me to be strategic, insightful, and supportive. And I think they're very important traits.
Do you think a word of mouth is a good way for people to find a lawyer? And if not, what other ways can a client actually find a lawyer?
Word of mouth is definitely a great way to find a lawyer. And in fact, that's how most of our clients at Feeney Family Law come to us. We're effectively a referral-based word of mouth type firm. I think too, though, when it does come to word of mouth, so often you get clients in who say, oh, well, my hairdresser told me this, or my such and such told me that, so it must be right. So what I would say is definitely if you've got someone who's got a recommendation about a good lawyer who was a good fit for them, explore it, but don't necessarily take everything you hear via word of mouth as gospel.
Yes, because as you said before, they've got to be a good fit.
Exactly. And that's ultimately, at Feeney Family Law, we talk about it being a bit of a finishing school. So it's not, for us, it's not just about having a client come in who we churn through the legal process, hey presto, you're done. It's about being able to equip you to move on with your life. And like I said earlier, that's why services like the service you offer, Barb, in conjunction with legal services, are really important, because you need to be able to transition to a life post-separation.
Great advice there, Annalee. So Annalee, if someone wants to contact you, which would be the best way for a client to contact you?
I work at Feeney Family Law, a Brisbane-based law firm. We have an online presence, www.feeney.familylaw.com.au.
Thank you, Annalee, for being part of this podcast. I think some of your ideas and your tips and your strategies for people who are navigating the legal process during or after their breakup, I think you've given them some great advice that they can take away, they can think about, and hopefully when it is time for them to find a lawyer, they find the right one that is the right fit for them. So thank you again, Annalee.
Thank you very much, Barb.
If you would like to hear previous Breakup Recovery podcasts, visit barbarastevens.com.au. Connect with Barbara Stevens on social media with Barbara Stevens Breakup Recovery Mentor on Facebook and at You'll Be Okay on Twitter. Read further blogs, view webinar replays, and download your free ebook, 3 Easy Steps to Surviving Your Breakup, and much more at barbarastevens.com.au.